Well, good evening, everybody. My name is Margie McCowan, and not only am I a proud Brescia alumna, I'm also a member of the Lead With Us campaign cabinet. It's my pleasure to welcome you to our Women's Leadership panel on this first day of our week-long celebration of Brescia's 2021 virtual homecoming. Today, I'm honored to serve as a moderator of this remarkable panel. Before we dive into what I'm sure will be an incredible discussion, I would like to formally introduce our panelists. Our first two panelists represent our alumni. Nicole Ewing is a member of Brescia's class of 2001. After receiving her honors Bachelor of Arts from Brescia, she achieved her Bachelor of Laws from Osgoode Hall Law School at York University. Today, Nicole lives in Ottawa, Ontario, and serves as the National Director, Tax and Estate Planning at TD Wealth. In her role, she works with advisors across TD to provide advanced tax, estate, business succession, and philanthropic planning solutions to families and business owners. Please join me in welcoming our first panelist and the 2021 recipient of the Carmel Murphy Alumni Award of Distinction. Joining us from Ottawa, Nicole Ewing. Welcome, Nicole.
Oh, thank you. Pleasure to be here.
Navriti Sharma is a member of Brescia's class of 2011 and 2013. Navriti holds undergraduate degrees in biology, nutrition and dietetics, and a Master's of Science in Food and Nutrition. As co-founder of Nutrition Professionals of Canada, Navriti works with people from all walks of life, including everyday heroes and professional athletes, to help them achieve their nutrition goals, no matter how tough those goals may seem at the beginning. In addition to her work at NutriPro Can, she carries a deep passion for giving back to her community, regularly contributing to community education, school board nutrition initiatives, and workplace health and wellness programs. Please join me in welcoming our final alumna panelist and the 2021 recipient of the Sister Mary Lou Mackenzie Young Alumna Award of Merit. Joining us from right here in London, Navriti Sharma. Welcome, Navriti.
Thank you so much. I am so excited to be here.
And we're excited to have you. Well, now it's my distinct privilege to introduce our final panelist, Dr. Loretta Frederking. Dr. Frederking is a passionate and experienced educator and leader who believes in educating the whole person. With over 25 years of teaching and research experience, she's transformed her knowledge into practice in the areas of social justice and inclusion. Dr. Frederking holds a BA from the University of Toronto in political science, a master's from Columbia University in political science, and a PhD from Washington University in St. Louis in political science. She first joined the Brescia community as vice principal as academic dean in 2018 and was warmly welcomed as president on August 1st of this year. Please join me in welcoming Brescia's president from her home in London, Dr. Loretta Frederking. Welcome, all three of you.
Thank you.
Well, thank all of you for being here with us today. And while I wish we were all in person inside the Brescia's beautiful academic pavilion, I know I will be just inspired sitting here in my home office. Today's panel will focus on women's leadership and the role in which these outstanding women and their experiences have played in empowering their decisions and their own personal success and success of others. A few of the questions today will be asked of all three panelists, whereas others have been developed more specifically based on each of their own experiences. So I would like to start, first of all, for a shared question for all three panelists, if I may. Our first question: in today's modern society, why is it still so crucial to support women's leadership and have women take on positions of power and influence? In addition, how do you feel that COVID-19 has impacted leadership styles and the way in which women lead? So Dr. Frederking, I'm hoping we can start with you first of all.
Well, thank you. This is my distinct pleasure, and it's wonderful. This is one of the first few events as president of Brescia University College, and I could be more proud to be the leader of Canada's Women's University and to be part of this distinguished panel. Margie, thank you for leading us, and Navriti and Nicole, thank you so much for letting me share this space with you. I also want to thank Allison, Heather, the team, for putting together this really splendid panel. I want to thank our Chancellor for being here and the members of our Board of Trustees and all of our friends who are joining us this evening for this homecoming celebration. It really is unlike our ideal when we're together and able to enjoy the wonderful food from the Mercado and able to spend time together. But this is really refreshing. And I want to assure each and every one of you, our campus is vibrant. Students are on campus, they're learning, our faculty are teaching, and it feels more familiar than it ever has in the last 18 months. So that is really the gift that I want to offer you. Brescia is doing what Brescia does best, it's building community. So thank you for letting me have a bit of a preamble. And the question, which I know Navriti and Nicole are much more interesting as panelists than I, but I do want to offer my perspective from the undergraduate self. So when you ask about the importance of power and influence in women leaders, I go back to my Canadian roots, studying political science, and learning about South Asian leaders in particular, and how many of them were women, and how those distinct voices were so powerful for me as a young woman to realize in the world, there was a welcoming place and places where women could really rise and have an impact. And I loved reading about Bender Anayake, about Bhutto, about Indira Gandhi, and all of these women were inspiring for the fact that they stood on stages and they had positions. I think that is as important today, insofar as we know that women are inspired by other women. They see them on stage and they recognize, I can now see myself. And that's been documented in the literature, but it's also what we know in our hearts. When we see women standing and making statements and publicly putting themselves out there, we know that we too are capable of that sort of impact. And I think that that's what we want to pass on for women. And also with the research. So I'm leaning on Dr. Marlene Jansen-LaBerre, who's our new distinguished chair of the Center for Women in Leadership, who's guided me to understand that there are really different leadership traits. And so when you ask about the COVID question, what are we seeing in terms of COVID and its impact on women leaders? We're seeing more than ever before, women leaders are being embraced for their feminine traits. Well, what are those feminine traits that allow a political leader to thrive? It's really that balancing. You know, I could put so many of us in the kitchen making dinner, holding a baby, and writing up our notes for the next board meeting. And I think similarly, what we've seen is the political leaders who see the multitasking and who understand the balance in COVID-19 time have really been able to thrive. Also the pivoting. So when there's a need, the feminine trait leader responds and clears the clutter, like isn't afraid to take on new goals, new aspirations to meet the most pressing challenges. And I think that that's really what we see with COVID-19 in terms of the leaders who have been able to thrive. And it's not coincidence that the leaders who have been able to thrive are more often than not the females in our midst.
Wow. Thank you, Dr. Frederking. Amongst everything you said there, I like the clear the clutter part. Yes, women are very good at that, aren't they? You know, after listening to your approach on women's leadership, I truly believe that Brescia is in very good hands. Thank you so much for your response. Nicole, on to you, please.
I love that, and I'm inspired now. And I love that where you immediately went with that was the historical significance and strength that women have in the past already demonstrated that leadership and that inspiration. And yet in my industry, in the finance world, we're not quite there yet. And we don't have that history to be able to pull from. And so the women who are in the senior leadership positions today, this is really that first generation of where we had the opportunity to see women in those roles, because it wasn't too long ago that they weren't. And I reflect on my own experience, and it wasn't too long ago that I was told I didn't look the part when I was applying for a job that I was perfectly capable of doing and qualified for, which I proved because I ended up getting the part and demonstrated my ability. But I think that's partly why it's so important to have people who are coming behind me in this role never being told that again, right? Because if they look like me, then they look the part because we've changed what the part looks like or what people think about. But it's not just in our own roles that we're able to demonstrate that leadership. It also, again, in finance, it's my reference points where I think about, the lack of financial literacy that we have just generally as a country, and women in particular, I think it's because we haven't had that historical reference point for women to feel comfortable and capable. And I'll just give a couple of examples. We know that 80% of women leave their financial advisor within a year of their male spouse passing away. 80%. And we know that the number is even higher of women who will say that they feel comfortable with their financial advisor. And yet how critically important is it to understand, how are you taxed? What risks are you prepared to take? How can you make decisions if you don't understand and trust somebody enough to reveal your true self and your whole self to them so that they can provide the best advice for you? And so I think we do, it's critically important to have women in these positions of leadership, to have women who other women will feel comfortable speaking to and sharing their experiences and sharing their whole story so that they get the best possible advice for them. So that's on the one side. I think when I think about COVID and some of I think there's some risks, and I think there's some incredible opportunities that COVID has shared for us. I think opening up, I've seen in my own industry, being able to work remotely, being able to work from places, rural places, or being able to work on different schedules than we may have been able to work in the past, is opening up just the doors to people across the country. They don't have to pick up and move and live in downtown Toronto to take on some of those senior leadership roles. They're now open to everyone. But something that concerns me a little bit, and I hope that we can make some progress in this space, is still how women's contributions are recognized. And what COVID has done is had people chatting a little bit more about what their experiences are and what they're seeing and what they're doing in their off hours. And I have some friends I know who just do incredible work with quilting, right? Which we know it's a storytelling arts and craft. It brings communities together. It has reached people, brought people out of isolation, connected people. There's been fundraisers, just incredible opportunities with the quilting world. And when they bring that up, that they did that on the weekend, there's still kind of a silence on the call. Nothing gets picked up from it. And yet I've been on calls where one of our male colleagues may share that he built a deck over the weekend, and accolades and rewards, and everybody's thrilled to hear it. And that's a contribution that was for him and his family, and yet the women's contribution, which was for her community, is not recognized in the same way. So I think COVID some incredible opportunities, but certainly some ways that maybe the light has been shone on where we still have some work to do. So I'll stop. I could go on. So I don't have a clock in my in my room, so you'll have to stop me if I carry on.
Oh, thank you, Nicole. That was fascinating. And your statistic on the 80% of women that leave their financial advisor once their spouse passes. That's
telling, isn't it?
Yeah, it's really. I would have never thought that. So TD is so fortunate to have you in a senior leadership role, setting the stage for young women following in your footsteps. So they're very fortunate to have you, and we're very fortunate to have you today. Thank you so much. So Navriti, I think we're going to finish this question with you.
Yeah, Nicole and Loretta, they just brought up so many fascinating points about just women in leadership and how, in a sense, like there's a lot of history to it, but then it's really new as well. And so essentially, like, I feel like we're just kind of still paving the way for us, and there's still a lot of work to do, I feel, when it comes to us in leadership. But it's also so important, and I think we're seeing all of the benefits to having women in leadership. I reflect on kind of my past. So I worked, kind of have like a science and a financial background. I worked at Scotiabank for 11 years as a teller as I was going through school. Absolutely loved that job, loved it. But I was at Brescia for part of the time that I was working there, and I remember I was asked to do a project in one of my classes on women in leadership. I loved it. And it was just something that I was actually kind of curious about myself. But you just can't figure out the time when you're a student. But because it was a project, all of a sudden it was just a priority now. So I thought about Scotiabank actually, because that's where I was employed at the time, and I started to kind of really delve into leadership in Scotiabank. And obviously looking at the tree, the hierarchy tree, right? There were like 2 women, right, in the tree that were like recent hires into the upper management role, because then I started to really delve into what their history was. The most fascinating, intelligent women, but there were 2. So I was just kind of like, okay, I guess this is going to make my project a little easy, but then also a lot like kind of unfortunate at the same time. But that just kind of like really sparked like an interest in my mind that, that's not cool to not have like that kind of representation when, like Nicole mentioned, that we actually are equally, we would be equally as incredible in the role, have the experience, the intelligence to take on whatever role in the upper management. So I've been I was thinking about that a lot, and that kind of really started a little bit of a fire in me to take that a little bit further. So when just thinking about this question now, just about women in leadership. So I started thinking back to some of my experiences, and what I really feel is that having women in leadership roles, it's so important, not just for us to be in those roles, but also to inspire other women to believe in themselves, to become leaders themselves. Having more women in leadership roles will create more roles for role models, for younger aspiring female leaders, and encourage them to start earlier in their pursuit. I think it'll also create almost like a shift in their mindset just from a young age, just in general, to just start that journey. Whereas we've kind of had to pave the way, we can start that for them. So it's not difficult, like we're kind of experiencing now. Women in leaders can bring on unique transformational ideas. This is something that I really learned in that project that I was doing. We have new outlooks and perspectives that are just completely different than maybe what corporations are used to, and that's something unique to women. I also feel that women leaders can enhance the workplace and just improve the culture, which is essentially what I really started to see when I was in Scotiabank. Just by boosting teamwork and by demonstrating passion and enthusiasm and just basically bringing on a whole new dimension to the workplace. it's actually like a published fact that high performing businesses in Canada tend to have more women in leadership roles, right? That shouldn't be surprising, but that's a recent fact, right? So that's a telltale sign right there that it's so important to have women in those leadership roles. There was another fact that I came across, and I mean, this is not shocking at all, but women excel at their ability to communicate. Female leaders especially have the power to enhance meaningful communication, which is so, so important for businesses to run successfully and to achieve better outcomes. So I recently read an incredible quote in Forbes magazine just recently by one of the chairman of Estee Lauder, and I think his name was Leonard Lauder. And essentially what he said was that never make an important decision without a woman at the table. And that really resonated with me because it shows you the emerging recognition and importance of having us in those leadership roles, and especially in the important decision-making roles. So that was incredible. And I know we've all brought up that women do have the ability to wear many hats. We all have brought that up. And I think that that's not surprising, that, you know, we all have superhero moms who've done it all, right? They've balanced careers, households, families, social lives. And it's no shock that women can quickly adjust to different situations and can find those really quick kind of solutions, which are so key in any work environment. So that's really unique to us. And then the last thing I just really wanted to point out was having more women in leadership roles. It can really actually help to close that pay gap. We're still far from closing that pay gap, but it brings us just even a little bit closer to really kind of becoming more of an equal. We are in many ways, but just in terms of that alone. So it's kind of an exciting time, but there's just so much work to do.
So much work to do is right. Thank you so much, Nafridi, for sharing your perspective. And you certainly are a leader and someone for young women to aspire to be. So thank you so much. Well, I think we're off to an incredible start with our panel this evening. So I think we're going to move on to our next question. So this question is going to be directed to Nicole and Nafridi, our two alumna. And so during your time at Brescia, as a Brescia student, how did you feel supported and empowered to develop your leadership potential? And in addition, to who or to what do you credit to influencing your development as a leader at Brescia? So Nicole, can we start with you again?
Sure, of course. So, I think back to where I was when I was a Brescia student, and I'll be honest, being a leader was the furthest thing from my mind. It was even belonging was what I was trying to achieve at that time. Felt kind of like a misfit. Felt like I was not really sure I belonged, and yet, Brescia was I don't know how to say this other than the essence of Brescia, I felt in every part of me. So I wasn't in residence. I took philosophy, which meant I was off campus or at other campuses quite a bit for my studies. I lived off campus and didn't have that direct interaction with everybody. And yet I felt incredibly welcome and a part of it. So I think from having access to the professors, and I felt at that time that I was met where I was at. And so I remember Dr. Hudecki, when I'd want to speak to him after class, he would say, I'll meet you in your office. Well, I was a smoker at the time, and I used to be out front of the school, and he would come out and talk to me. And for me to have, somebody of his esteem and his caliber willing to come and meet me and talk to me when I was would have been considered like a bad kid, right, for smoking. He heard me through all of that, and he saw me through all of that, and we had these, incredible exchanges outside the front door, and that's not something I think that many schools offer, right, and really give that opportunity for professors to to see their students, to know their students, and whoever they are at that time in their lives. And then when I think about coming back, I'd go off and I'd come back, and I'd always go into the lounge area and sit. And there was women there. I was inspired by their bravery. I wasn't brave yet. I mean, for me, showing up was as brave as I could be at the time. And so watching them put themselves out there and, going for student council, or, going for this job and that job, and participating just in Frosh Week, like that was too much for me at the time. And being in the room of other women who were doing that and watching them, fail and succeed, and just be kind and generous and open with one another, and knowing that I could always walk up and sit down on any couch where there was a free spot, and I was going to be welcome, I was going to be included. That has served me very, very well throughout my life and my career, to know that sometimes I would say just show up. And I think that Brescia gave me the courage to do that in a lot of ways, because of the kindness with which I was received when I did.
I love that, kindness. Yes, that's certainly what the Brescia family community is known for. Thank you so much, Nicole. Navriti, could you share with us your memories from your time at Brescia?
Totally. I remember it like it was yesterday. So it's a good question. I just kind of reflecting on my time. I came from like main campus, and it was great. But when I came to Brescia, I think I had a little bit of a shock with just how I guess close-knit everything felt. I wasn't used to it. So it was a little bit of a shock for me, but as the time went on, I just realized how important that feeling is. As a student that's just trying to figure out the world, right? Just trying to figure out who you are, where you belong, like Nicole was saying, what your purpose is. And I was just so used to just kind of thinking about those things very independently. And so I come to Brescia, and all of a sudden, there's all the support, and everybody's so welcoming, all the way from professors to admin to students to the clubs that were at Brescia that just completely wanted you to have every part of every moment there. It was such a different feeling, and I just remember appreciating that, first feeling a little bit shocked and maybe even a little bit uncomfortable, because I wasn't used to this. But then all of a sudden, it's like almost like you crave that feeling as you're trying to figure out yourself, and that really changed my experience overall with being at Brescia. And it just kind of became something that, like, I just started to really look forward to, or if you're just having a moment where you just kind of don't know what you feel, right? Because like, being that age too, you just have no idea, but then you just kind of realize that like everybody's in the same boat trying to figure it out together. And then in the meantime, you're really trying to make a difference, right? So that to me, it really resonated with me in a way that I had no idea that it would, which I would have never experienced if I wasn't at Brescia. The other thing is that the professors, what I really found from that is that I really started to really look forward to going to class. I mean, I always did, but for more reasons than just education all of a sudden, just because now I was looking forward to just kind of hearing leaders speak. And it was incredible, because here I am, sitting in front of these incredible people who are highly educated, many being very respected in like leaders in the field of research, and just kind of knowing that they're in front of me and they're talking to me, right? And our classes aren't huge, so that eye contact happened all the time, and I almost kind of felt like, now we're on the same playing field for some reason, right? And it just kind of made us feel a little bit equal, and I think that just kind of raised my morale a little bit about and my expectations for myself all of a sudden, just because these people, they're talking to me now, so now I have to kind of show them my best. And I just wasn't really expecting that, but that really just transformed my mindset in just such a unique way, again, that I just wasn't really kind of expecting. And then there were just so many events and clubs and emails and, about leadership and, attend this or hear this person speak, or there was always something that, I started to kind of really attend those things, and like it would constantly re-inspire me. and remind me of what I'm really trying to do here. So Brescia really provided that kind of support, which I thought was incredible. And then when I think about just kind of the specific people who may have influenced me throughout my journey, I mean, there were a ton of people, but I'm not going to take up all the time. So there's just three particular people that I really kind of wanted to bring up. So Dr. Paula Dwarzek. She was one of my professors in my undergraduate degree, as well as my research advisor when I was doing my master's. And she really embodied hard work, dedication, intelligence, determination, courage, and balance. And balance because she did so much at Brescia, but then somehow she had a family. And she was a great mom and a great wife. And I have no idea still to date how she did all of that and just made it look easy. Right. So for me, that was just such a great role model to have, that just to kind of see that and talk to her every single day and see that she's doing incredible things. And meanwhile, she's a mom, she's a wife, right? The second person that I would love to mention is Kayla Glenn. She was our dietetic education coordinator at the time. And I remember I was standing in her office once and we were just kind of chatting, and the doors were always open. And she told me that she could see me in a leadership role, like leading a company. And this is way before I even thought that was somewhere that I would go. But she had such a great way of letting you know that she believed in you. And I remember that conversation because I was just like, really? But here we are today. So it's like remarkable kind of like what those words can do for you. And then finally, the last person I'd love to acknowledge is Carly Bell. And she was my first year business professor, who's one of the most confident and down-to-earth women that I've ever met. And she had an incredible way of explaining her lessons. And it was just so hard not to feel captivated by her words during the lectures. In fact, I think that she is in a leadership role as a leadership development specialist, I think, in the community, which I think is incredible for her. But I just remember looking at her being like, how do I get there? Mm-hmm. So, and that was all through Brescia, which was incredible. So you can probably tell that I really appreciate my time there.
Oh, well, that's fantastic, Navriti. Thank you so much. It's so wonderful to hear that Brescia's remained so true to its values and continues to provide a supportive environment to students. As an alumna, I too believe that the strong community on campus has such a great influence on our student leadership development. That's wonderful. Thank you. So now I will turn to our president with a question. Dr. Frederking, as you begin your tenure as president, how do you hope to increase access to education for women and address issues of gender inequality to ensure our students feel supported during their Brescia experience?
Well, thank you for that question, Margie. I think that so much of what Navriti and Nicole have said can be brought into answering this question. The whole emphasis on invisible and the stories or the realities, the experiences that need to come forward. That's what Brescia is intentional about in our classrooms. And that's what transforms our perspective. That's what the essence of education is. And that's what Brescia offers and needs to continue in terms of access to education. So we have some exciting initiatives in the future that we've begun already. One of them is a return home to complete your degree program. So with the registrar of the summer, we realized, as so often happens, it's women who leave their undergraduate education because of the balance. Navriti pointed out to Paula Dwarzek, Dr. Dwarzek, I'm a fan of hers for sure. And so many balance it, but then so many can't in terms of pressures from family, whether it's financial or caring for elders or young. And so they leave the university setting. So over the summer, Dr. Mel Molnar and I looked at the lists over the last 8 years of who had left Brescia. And we reached out to them to say, come home, finish your degree. Now more than ever with online learning, which is something that had not been possible for Brescia before COVID-19, we could begin to approach education with much more flexibility. So that's an interesting key way that we're encouraging access to education. And then we're offering new programs with the Ontario government initiative called micro-credentials. So stackable small credentials that can be tied to any person's career in an industry. So let's say you're in the food industry, and as Navriti was pointing out, her education with food, or as Nicole was pointing out, her experiences in the classroom, you could come back and take an ethics micro-credential over the weekend with Dr. Dennis Decky in the future. I haven't roped him in yet, but I'll try to. Those micro-credentials allow women in particular to access degrees and small credits that will add up to meaningful change in their careers, really break through the glass ceiling wherever they are. So those are a couple of the initiatives that we're working on now.
Wow, that's really very exciting. Thank you so much, Dr. Frederking. You know, Brescia's in such a fortunate position having you at its helm, and I look forward to following these new initiatives, and it's a pretty exciting time. So thank you for sharing that information. So now moving along, I'd like to direct a specific question to each member of our panel. This series of questions will be our final formal questions prior to opening up to the audience. So we are going to start with Navriti. So Navriti, I understand that the vast majority of your dietitians on staff at NutriPro Can are actually Brescia alumna. I'm intrigued to hear, what is it about Brescia graduates that make them stand out in the interview process and become such valued members of your team?
Such a good question. There's so many reasons why Brescia grads stand out just during our interview process, and we've interviewed quite a few people over the last years. And I mean, it's kind of easy to answer this, I'm not gonna lie. So I'll tell you that when we are interviewing Brescia grads, we always find that they're so prepared and so professional. And that's just a no-brainer. It's like, it stands out so obviously that they're from Brescia because I know the training that they've gone through. And it's evident because it's almost like you recognize, it's like someone who has a Ferrari, right? You just kind of look at them and you're already in the same family. And you just kind of feel that without even knowing. And I remember the one time we were interviewing somebody, kind of joined the interview a little bit late. I was running a little bit late from a previous meeting. And we had a couple interviews. So here I am kind of scrambling a little bit. And I'm listening to the person speak and I'm like, I got to look at this person's resume really quick while they're talking, but I have a feeling they're from Brescia. And it was just because of the way that they were speaking and just the sophistication that I was noticing. So I'm like, I wonder if I'm right. So I quickly go back and I look at their resume and I'm like, of course they're from Brescia, right? Like literally no shock. So it was just, it was so nice to just kind of see that connection and how obvious it actually is. Because of the different kinds of candidates that we do interview, and there's nothing wrong with the other candidates by any means, but there's just this level of professionalism, sophistication, respectfulness that really comes from Brescia students. Confidence, they have so much confidence, but it's not in a way that all they want to do is speak or anything like that. It's that quiet kind of confidence that they really do believe in themselves, right? Which is right, which is so great to kind of just to see from somebody who's been trained so well. Mm. I always kind of find that they're well-rounded. That's something that's always encouraged in our program, right? Is yeah, of course you want to do be great at your academics, but what else do you do, right? How do you give back to the community? And there's always something that they always have to add about just something else aside from just kind of working or academics. They're excellent communicators. And that's something that's so obvious. And I think that goes kind of back to the sophistication of just kind of how they think. And then just kind of the words that come out that becomes really obvious that they've just been trained so well.
Fantastic.
Compassion is another one, right? Which is so important in our field. Mm-hmm. To be compassionate, but they're almost built like that, right? To have that kind of sense of caring within everything that they do in their past and even with us. They're critical thinkers, and that's obvious through their responses that they give us.
Wow.
And one of my favorites is that they're honest and transparent, which is so unique, I find, just because that becomes so important. And I think that we forget that, like, that's something that we want to learn about, but that also becomes important to kind of see that that's just embedded in who they are. And that's the interview process. But then really quickly, there's just a couple of things that we notice, just additional qualities that we notice once we've actually hired them.
They're just the
interview.
whole package. They're the whole package.
Yeah, like, I swear I could just go on, but like, their excellent ability to do research. And I know that I lived that. So it becomes obvious even in that sense, once they're actually on our team, of how much they actually contribute just through their own research. They're true team players. Brescia really, really emphasizes teams and projects, like group projects. And so that becomes super, super obvious. They're super collaborative in any kind of projects that we have. They're always open to any kind of collaboration. And then the work that they actually do is just so high class. Open to feedback. Yeah, they're committed, they're independent, and I really do feel that they're just so willing to go above and beyond.
Oh, that's great.
Which is fantastic, right? So for us, it's just so difficult to not have a group of Brescia grads on our team.
As I said, the whole package. Well, that's fabulous. So thank you so much for that that very insightful response, Nabridi. Very much appreciate that. Yeah. So now I think we're going to turn over our next question to Nicole. Nicole, you've served as an alumna mentor in Brescia's professional mentoring program, even being awarded the Mentor of the Year award this past year. First of all, a big congratulations to you. And I want to thank you so much for helping to guide our students as they navigate the often challenging world ahead. So what drives you to get involved, Nicole, as a volunteer in this program? And what would you say to others to encourage them to support women's education at Brescia?
Oh gosh, it's such a privilege to be able to be invited to participate in the program. I encourage everybody to do it. We don't know what we don't know, even about ourselves and our students where they're at. And what I appreciated so much about my experience at Brescia was being met where I was at that time. And it's incredible that I have the opportunity now to do that with students and meet them where they're at. They're not going to have the opportunity to be inspired or see the leadership outside of where where they're traveling right now. They're students, they're in school, they might have some work opportunities, but necessarily they don't have access to certain boardrooms, certain conversations. And so I do think it's incumbent upon us to bring those conversations to them, to bring ourselves to them and expose ourselves as just the regular folk that we are, to invite them to ask questions, to show our own vulnerabilities. And it's incredible the feedback that we get from that, because by the students, they just want to practice, right? I mean, to your point, Nabridi, they are so well prepared. They are they want to put the work in. They want to show up in the best possible way. How are they going to know what that looks like if we don't, as community members, give them the opportunity to practice, get feedback, hear what is, what we're perceiving as their strengths? And I remember just one of my most significant moments in the program last year was where we did mock interviews, and we had the opportunity to meet other mentees and that we hadn't met before, and let them, we had interview questions for them, and just seeing them from the beginning of the conversation to 20 minutes later, just the improvement or the confidence that was built in that short time frame was just awesome. It's awesome to witness. I encourage everybody just to. I got so much more out of it than I think that I gave, and I will participate as long as you'll have me. We don't we don't know how significant those conversations are to people. And if it's someone like me who didn't come from a family or a community or experiences where I had those people in my life that I could learn from in that way, that we can be that broader community for our students and let them know that, you know, you don't have to know somebody who's done it all. You can just be who you are and show up as you are, and you will have the support of the broader community now. And I'm, you know, a witness to 20 years from now, you're going to have that support. So it's,
That's wonderful.
Yeah, it's incredible.
Thank you so much, Nicole. I think we're going to hold you to that. Our Brescia community is so fortunate to call you a proud supporter, a strong leader, and most of all, a bold and inspirational alumna. Thank you so much for your response. Dr. Frederking, the last individualized question is for you today. You serve as president of Canada's only women's university. In the summer edition of our alumni magazine, Bold, you noted, Brescia's time for being a best kept secret is over. What did you mean by this statement? And how can the Brescia community come together to help shine a light on this outstanding university?
Oh, thank you. And this is the right audience. I know I'll get a warm welcome as I remind us all about our Lead With Us comprehensive campaign. I know so many on the call, the meeting this evening, are a part of that campaign. From you, Margie, and Aaron Rankin Nash, and then all the team at Brescia. But the Lead With Us campaign was a bold step into the spotlight to say it is time for Brescia to raise $10 million. And that responsibility and that opportunity is going to forge the path for future generations of women. And it's going to create a sustainable investment in our academic programs, the ones that we've heard about from Nicole and Nicole. But it is really the way that we're shining a light on all that is Brescia. Our academic programs, our experiential learning, our grads. And as you see here, we really want each one of our grads and all of you who are friends of Brescia to invest, to recognize that COVID has brought unique challenges, and gender inequality has never been as transparent, but also continues to be problematic. And so we all have, I think it's a moral imperative to shout the joy of Brescia, whether it's to recruit young women from high school or whether it is to invest your hard-earned dollars into the future for the next generation. We all have a responsibility to pay it forward and shine that bright light on Brescia.
Thank you so much, Dr. Frederking. And as an alumna, I'm truly inspired by your vision and the future that you have for my alma mater. As a member of the Lead With Us campaign, I'm excited to introduce Brescia to new supporters. And as a woman, I'm just so proud. Thank you. So panelists, this has just been an amazing evening, and I'd like to thank all of you for your openness, your wonderful insights on women's leadership. I know that I speak for everyone virtually tuning in today, that your thoughts and insight today have not only inspired us, but I think you've given us a lot to think about as we navigate this changing world together. This has been an important discussion, and I'm sure that our online participants have enjoyed and benefited from hearing from all of you as well. So like our incredible panelists, I hope that everyone who's virtually joined us today will look for ways to continue to leverage your leadership positions in order to assist the next generation of women leaders. We all have an opportunity and a responsibility to help one another in an effort to create a world where women are not only valued, but are viewed as experts in their field, whatever field that may be. So I just want to tell you that, you know, even though we're online, we still want to commemorate our time together. So I'd like to ask if everybody, as long as you're comfortable, would you be able to turn on your camera so we can capture a group photo? I hope everyone can do that. I'm on already, so. And I think Allison is going to direct us. Okay. I have no idea. Does everybody see everybody? Yes. Okay. Now I'm not great at these.
We're all good.
Are we all good? Thank you so much. Thank you, Allison. I was waiting for you to come through for me. So, so now we may have a couple of questions. Do we, Allison? I know we're a little bit low on time, but
I have not seen any questions come through to me yet. I was just in the middle of typing before I took a photo. If anyone does have a question, you can send it in a private chat to me.
yes, if there's any questions, we're at 7:56 right now, and I know everybody's excited for the week ahead. But if anybody has any questions for our panel this evening, if you could go through chat right to Allison, and she will share them with us.
Well, I know that Erin has a question here. She's mentioned, so I'll let you address Erin, maybe Margie first.
Erin?
Sure. I'm having problems with my internet, but hopefully you can hear me okay. So first of all, Nicole and Frida, thank you both for being such eloquent and bold Brescia leaders, and congratulations on your awards. Well deserved. And you've talked so wonderfully about Brescia, and as an alumni, I agree with you 100%. So my question to each of you is, what would you encourage Brescia to do now so that we can remain vital and necessary for future generations of women?
I have a thought that it's more about what you're already doing, and I just want to just say how thrilled I am to see it. In our social media and the comments that I'm seeing, and Brescia's positions and being outspoken and not being shy away from any issues. I look carefully at how I read them all on Facebook and LinkedIn, and how are we showing up in the community? What are we saying? Are we leaders? Timing matters, right? Are we having those conversations at the right time? And I am just so incredibly grateful that we are showing up that way, and that we are leaders in that. So I just want to thank those who are responsible for that. And I think that that's so critically important in this time in particular, that the timing and messaging, that's how we're communicating, that's how our message is getting out, and that's what people are seeing. And I think that I'm just very, very proud of the way that we're showing up in that space. So thank you for that. I think more of that.
Thank you, Nicole. Navridi or Dr. Frederking, would either of you like to respond to Erin's question?
I would have to agree with Nicole. Like, I think she nailed it. It's so incredible just to see how much Brescia is integrated into just not even the city, but just across the provinces too. And speaking from people in different provinces, our business is registered in Alberta and BC, and people are aware of who Brescia is. And I remember I was speaking to somebody who's just interested in our services, and they were just like, oh, where have you guys received your education? And so I was just speaking particularly about myself, but I was just like, Brescia University College. And I was ready to kind of go on about who Brescia is, but they were like, oh, okay, awesome. I know Brescia. And I was like, of course you do, right? So it was so fun to hear that. And also just when people do hear that you're from Brescia, then it's almost like a trust. Like, being in the industry that I'm in, it's just almost a trust that people have in what you do or who you are as a person. And when we've received those compliments so many times before, and that just kind of speaks to how well Brescia has done with how much we've put ourselves in the community with the messaging, like Nicole was saying, and just how hard we work towards building that reputation, it just makes me so proud. So I have to echo what Nicole is saying, that I don't know if I would change anything particularly, but yeah, but it's great what we see.
Well, thank you so much. What a wonderful response from both of you. Thank you. We do have another question here. Well, I think that this is probably directed to our alumni. So the question is, and Navriti, I'll let you stay on to answer this one, and then we'll go to Nicole. What is the single most important piece of advice you've ever received?
Wow, great question. Depends on the day. Gosh, you know, I would. You know, I've been actually doing a lot of research on leadership and just reading a lot of books on that. And I've heard this through my time at Brescia. Probably didn't resonate with me as much, but I knew the messaging was there. And now in the role that I'm in right now, and I would definitely say that it's stay true to your values. Know what your values are and stay true to your values, and every single decision that you make will be right. I didn't really know, I didn't know what that meant, to be honest, right? I've heard that a lot. I've had a couple mentors tell me this in the past as well, and it was phenomenal. And that's exactly how I make my decisions now, and I never regret it. So I would have to say right now, that's exactly my response.
I think that's a fantastic response. Thank you so much. Nicole, can you share with us?
Gosh, I don't know. I don't know if there's a single piece. Yeah, for me, it's always been to show up. Just show up. Show up when you're embarrassed. Show up when you're uncomfortable. Show up when you think you're going to blow it. Show up when you didn't do everything you thought you'd want to do. Just keep showing up. And that has served me well. But you put your head up, red, bright red, and shaking does not matter. Yeah, just be in the room when the things are happening.
I love it.
Yeah,
that's great. That's I'm gonna heed those words, because you know, sometimes you're not comfortable with the situation, moderating a panel, and it all works out wonderfully, doesn't it? So, well, you know, I have to say, I'm very sorry, but we've come to the end of today's Women's Leadership Panel. I just wanted to take this opportunity to thank all of you who have joined us remotely, but to formally thank our amazing panelists. Dr. Frederking, Nicole, Navriti, we're so grateful to have your time and insight today. Each of you serve as incredible beacons of inspiration to both our students and the world alike. I'm honored to be a part of this day with all of you. So I'm unable to provide you with the token of our appreciation in person, obviously, but please expect a package from Brescia in the very near future. And to our virtual audience, I hope many of you will consider joining us online throughout the week for the various events as we celebrate your connections to Brescia. So be sure to visit the website and social media for more information about all the exciting events and contests. Today, Brescia introduced reunion pins, and I am very happy to show you my 5- and 10-year pins. So fill out the form online and order your 5, 10, 25, or 50-year pins. They'll be mailed out to you. So thank you again for joining us, and have a wonderful week ahead. Good night.